Welcome to the Think Forward podcast, where we speak with futurists, innovators, and big thinkers. Come along with your host, Steve Fisher, and explore the future together.
Welcome back to Foundations in Foresight, a Think Forward series. I'm Steve Fisher, and today we're diving into one of the most practical and, dare I say, fun tools in the Futurist Toolkit, spectrum scenario planning and practice. If you've been following our journey, we've built a robust foundation of futures thinking. We've explored the 9 super shifts, mastered world-building techniques, and in our last episode, talked about extracting strategic insights from fictional futures. Now it's time to bring it all together through spectrum scenario planning, a sophisticated approach that leverages our spectrum layer analysis framework to create rich, multidimensional future scenarios. Today, we'll explore how to develop divergent, plural spectrum scenarios, use scenario design fiction writing to bring them to life, and examine how the super shifts shape these alternative futures. Most importantly, we'll learn how to use these scenarios to test strategies and build organizational resilience. Let's get into it. Traditional scenario planning often limits us to a 2x2 matrix with 4 possible futures. That's valuable, but in our complex, interconnected world, it's increasingly insufficient. Spectrum scenario planning takes a more nuanced approach, exploring futures across a spectrum of possibilities rather than binary options. This is where spectrum layer analysis, which we explored in episode 35, becomes invaluable. Remember, spectrum layer analysis allows us to examine futures through multiple layers, surface events and discourse, structures and systemic drivers, power and agency, cultural and psychological perception, conflict and tensions, narratives and belief systems, archetypes, and deep metaphors. By applying this layered analysis to our scenarios, we move beyond simplistic future projections. We develop rich, textured worlds that capture not just surface-level changes, but deeper societal, psychological, and systemic shifts. So how do we put this into practice? Let's walk through the process step by step. First, identify the super shifts most relevant to your domain. Are you particularly affected by IntelliFusion and the merging of human-machine intelligence? Is power flow and the transformation of energy systems reshaping your industry? Maybe BioNexus and the convergence of biology and technology are central to your future. Start by listing the 2 to 3 super shifts most critical to your context. Next, define your critical uncertainties, the key questions where different outcomes would create dramatically different futures. But instead of treating these as either-or propositions, place them on spectrums. For example, rather than will AI be regulated or not, think about a spectrum from heavily regulated and restricted AI to completely unregulated AI development, with various positions in between. Now comes the innovative part, applying spectrum layer analysis to build multidimensional scenarios. For each potential future, work through the 7 layers. What surface events and headlines would characterize this world? What structural systems would be in place? Who holds power and agency? What cultural mindsets and psychological frameworks dominate? Where are the tensions and conflicts? What narratives and beliefs guide society? And what deeper archetypes and metaphors underpin this reality? This layered approach helps you create scenarios that aren't just different on the surface, but fundamentally distinct in how they operate at every level. You might develop 4 to 5 divergent scenarios, each with its own internal logic and dynamics. For example, in an AI abundance scenario exploring IntelliFusion, you might see surface headlines about AI solving previously intractable problems, structural systems that distribute AI benefits widely, decentralized power structures, cultural mindsets embracing human-AI collaboration, minimal tensions around job displacement because of universal basic services, narratives about human-AI symbiosis, and archetypes of the augmented human as the ideal. Contrast this with a digital divide scenario where AI benefits accrue to a small elite, structural systems concentrate power, agency is limited to those with AI access, psychological frameworks of anxiety dominate, tensions between the tech-enhanced and unaugmented create conflict, narratives of technological determinism prevail, and the archetype of the left behind becomes central. Once you've developed these layered scenarios, it's time to bring them to life through scenario design fiction writing. This technique, which blends futures thinking with creative storytelling, helps make abstract possibilities tangible and relatable. Create artifacts from each future: news headlines, product descriptions, personal journals, organizational memos, or government policies. Write day-in-the-life narratives that show how people navigate these worlds. Develop mock advertisements or social media posts that reflect the values and priorities of each scenario. For instance, in our AI abundance scenario, you might write a fictional interview with a human AI integration coach, describing their work, helping people optimize their relationship with personal AI assistants. For the digital divide scenario, perhaps a journal entry from someone struggling to compete in a job market where AI augmentation has become a prerequisite for employment. These design fictions aren't just creative exercises, they're strategic tools that make abstract futures concrete, revealing implications that might otherwise remain hidden. They help stakeholders emotionally connect with different possibilities, moving foresight from intellectual understanding to visceral recognition. The next critical step is exploring strategic implications. For each scenario, ask, how would our current strategy perform in this future? What capabilities would we need to thrive? What risks become existential? What new opportunities emerge that don't exist today? Which products, services, or business models would flourish or fail? This is where the rubber meets the road, where foresight transforms into strategic action. The goal isn't to pick the most likely scenario and optimize for it. Instead, look for robust strategies that work reasonably well across multiple futures. While developing strategic options you can activate if specific scenarios begin to materialize. For example, a university exploring education futures might identify that building digital infrastructure is valuable across all scenarios, making it a core strategic priority. But they might also develop strategic options like specialized AI ethics programs or community-based learning hubs that would be particularly valuable in certain futures. Let me share a real-world example. A healthcare organization I worked with used spectrum scenario planning to explore how IntelliFusion and BioNexus might reshape patient care. They developed 4 distinct scenarios, from AI-driven personalized medicine to community-based health networks enhanced by simple technologies. Through spectrum layer analysis, they explored how each scenario would affect not just medical procedures, but patient expectations, regulatory frameworks, doctor-patient relationships, and healthcare economics. Their design fictions included patient journey maps, clinical workflow diagrams, and even medical school curricula from each future. This process revealed that while their current strategy was optimized for incremental technology adoption, it would fail in scenarios where patients became active co-creators of their health data, or where AI diagnostics became primary and human doctors secondary. This insight led them to develop new capabilities in patient engagement and AI collaboration that positioned them for multiple futures, not just one. Now, successfully implementing spectrum scenario planning does come with challenges. One common pitfall is creating scenarios that aren't truly divergent, different versions of the same basic future rather than fundamentally distinct worlds. Using spectrum layer analysis helps avoid this by ensuring scenarios differ at multiple levels, not just on the surface. Another challenge is making scenarios too abstract or theoretical. This is where scenario design fiction writing becomes essential, translating abstract possibilities into concrete, emotionally resonant stories and artifacts that stakeholders can engage with directly. Communication is also crucial. For scenarios to influence decisions, they must be easily understood and remembered. Use vivid names, compelling narratives, and tangible examples. Create immersive experiences that allow stakeholders to temporarily live in these alternative futures and feel their implications directly. Finally, remember the scenarios aren't static. They should evolve as new signals emerge and conditions change. Regularly revisit and refine your scenarios, tracking which seem to be gaining momentum and which are becoming less likely. So, let's bring all this together. Spectrum scenario planning, enhanced by spectrum layer analysis and scenario design fiction writing, offers a powerful approach to navigating an uncertain future, shaped by supershifts. It allows you to explore multiple futures in rich detail, identify robust strategies and strategic options, and build organizational resilience that thrives amid transformation. Here's my challenge for you. Choose a domain significantly affected by at least 2 supershifts. Develop 3 to 4 divergent scenarios using spectrum layer analysis, working through all 7 layers for each scenario. Then create at least 1 design fiction artifact from each future, a news article, a product description, a personal story. Finally, test your current strategy against these scenarios. Where does it succeed? Where would it fail? What capabilities would you need to develop to thrive across multiple futures? In our next episode, we'll build on this foundation with backcasting, a powerful technique that starts with your preferred future and works backward to create a roadmap for getting there. It's vision meets strategy in one elegant method. Until then, stay curious, create some future worlds, and as always, think forward.
Thanks for listening to the Think Forward podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.thinkforwardshow.com, as well as on YouTube under Think Forward Show. See you next time.